Okay, now to our discussion segment. Earlier in the year, the federal government launched an initiative to establish an operating model and framework for economic and financial inclusion with the aim to transform Nigeria into a $1 trillion dollar economy by 2030. The initiative is designed to combat poverty and catalyze sustainable economic growth from the ground up. How has this initiative fared since its launch? To shed more light on how it is renewing the hope of Nigerians through economic and financial inclusion is the technical assistant to the President on Economic and Financial Inclusion in the Office of Vice President, Dr. Nuruddin Jauro. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, viewers. Good afternoon, Nigerians. Thank you so much.
Okay, to start the conversation, let's start by you bringing us up to speed with so far, about the initiative. Tell us about the initiative. How much, just tell us the progress. Let's know the progress so far.
Okay, thank you so much, audience, and thank you so much, the viewers. Okay, so this administration, under our dear President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on assumption of duty, came up with the renewed hope agenda, which everybody knows about the intention of the agenda, which economic and financial inclusion actually is one of the integral part of this administration's agenda, as you know. So when we came on board, the main issue here is that prior to now, financial inclusion's implementation has been an institutional arrangement. Of course, it's been doing very well under the Central Bank of Nigeria, which up till this moment, they are the drivers of this engagement. So now, when we came on board, then the Office of the Advisor on Economic and Financial Inclusion was actually created in the presidency, and the conversation around economic and financial inclusion was then elevated to the National Economic Council. The essence is that at the National Economic Council, you all know that that's where we have the presence of the entire country, including subnationals and some key ministries. Some key ministers, of course, are members of that National Economic Council. So the discussions around it was that the first thing we did was actually to organize a national stakeholders workshop where the entire stakeholders were carefully selected, those with the technical know-how on what needs to be done, under this administration for this economic and financial inclusion. So this event actually took place precisely on 25th of April, 2024. That is this year. The intention was to actually engage Nigerians, especially the expert in that, to understand how can we now do it better, because from the inception of the Nigeria's journey to financial inclusion, which was launched, a National Financial Inclusion Strategy was launched in 2012 precisely. So the journey so far, at that time, I think the exclusion rate was about 46%, but now as at December 2023, the exclusion rate now dropped to 26%. So that means 74% of Nigerians are financially included. So now what we said here is that there is a bit of some key challenges out there. So because of that, there's a need for us to elevate this conversation to a kind of like a presidency level, whereby reporting now system becomes at the National Economic Council. So when we did that engagement, there was a symbolic commitment whereby an ASO Accord on Economic and Financial Inclusion was actually signed. What does that mean? The ASO Accord is just a kind of like a commitment of this administration in support of economic and financial inclusion, of course, vis-a-vis the Nigeria's journey to $1 trillion economy by the year 2030.
Okay, before we actually get to, because I understand that you're trying to bring us up to speed about the challenges.
Yeah.
Before we get to the challenges, are there specific communities or sectors that have benefited most in this from this particular initiative?
Well, anyway, as you know, financial inclusion is actually a national imperative, it's a national project. So different initiatives are actually going on within the public and private sector. It's sort of like a partnership that is taking place, for the government. Of course, the business of government is to create an enabling environment in terms of policy and regulatory reforms in order to make the environment, very okay for people to thrive and do their businesses. But as you know, financial inclusion, since it refers to access to financial services, of course, at affordable rate and all that, so every economically active Nigerians, he deserves a right to have access to financial services, right? And now combining it with economic inclusion, okay, economic inclusion, of course, has to do with some sort of economic opportunities, economic activities across the country so that people would be gainfully employed, they would be busy doing one or two things. With that in place, it will go a long way in curbing all these insecurities and whatever that is going on. So in terms of communities, of course, our target has been the rural communities. Why is it so? Because based on the midterm survey that was done, when the initial strategy that was issued in 2012 was refreshed, and then the version 02 of that was issued in 2018, and later in 2020 another one was issued. So what it does here is that we realize that there are about 5 key gaps that were then identified. Number one is the gender imbalance in that. So there's a need for us to do more in order to capture more women, to be financially included, right? Then another block, of course, is the age. Within the age bracket of 18 and 35, actually, they have less access to financial service. And these are the young guys, out there trying to do one or two things to make ends meet. Another block, of course, is rural and urban. So those people in the rural areas, they have lesser access. So those in the city, they have better advantage. So, and then again, we also have access to finance by MSMEs,
Okay,
and then the northern region.
That's just exactly what I'm talking about, particularly people at the grassroots that you said that you're actually targeted.
Yes.
So far, how much can you tell us about this improvement? You talked about improvement in terms of inclusion and exclusion. The exclusion part has gone down. Tell us about it. How has it affected the grassroots?
Well, when the journey began, which was in 2012, the exclusion rate was 46%. So meaning that 54% were then included. But as at the last count, which was, there is an agency called FINA, is an independent non-profit organization that does, survey, to know what is the status.
How much does it affect?
The current rate now is 74%,
74%.
inclusion and 26% exclusion.
When you quantify that, how much can you say has impacted on the people at the grassroots, most especially in our villages and,
Okay, the total adult, population we had, based on the numbers, we're talking about 18 years and above, was 111 million. So out of that, about 30 million Nigerians are excluded. So the balance of that actually are the ones that are included. Then in terms of the imbalance, of course, like I told you, the community, those at the rural areas, actually they have lesser access. So that's why we are deploying a lot of initiatives. In Central Bank, a lot has happened. Unlike before, you and I know that you have to walk into the bank either near you or you travel whatever number of kilometers to go and do financial transaction. But today, in your room, you can be able to do you can transfer money through your phone and all that. And apart from that, also there's agent banking that is helping. Almost in every village, you can have access to agents, that can at your doorstep, you can be able to do cash in, cash out. And then again, some other transactions. So I think those are some of the initiatives. There are quite a number of initiatives. For example, we have regional imbalance whereby a lot of exclusion now happens in the northern Nigeria, particularly northwest and northeast. So, but when we did the survey, we realized that I think about 33% of Nigerians excluded population complaints about, the product not meeting their own kind of religious requirement for them to do. That is the religious reason for being excluded. So with the deployment of non-interest banking, of course, by central bank, it goes a long way in bringing a lot of people into the formal financial sector. So a lot of initiatives are going on. Even right now, the elevation of that conversation to the National Economic Council level, as well as we're trying to work around deploying some public goods, for people at the grassroots, for us to deliver sort of like financial literacy and other platform where a lot of so we have series of activities that we're going to, but with the coming of this operating model, when concluded, I think that would spark the whole engagement. That would spark the whole discussion to get to the benefit of all Nigerians.
It's interesting that you talked about the Central Bank of Nigeria, I think, while you were explaining, because recently they've just launched the WeFi initiative, Women Empower Entrepreneurship Finance Initiative. I'm sort of curious, what do you make of that book? How do you think this will impact this particular initiative that you are driving?
Okay, when I was introducing the concept earlier on, I think I've told you there is a gender imbalance, right? In terms of, more men have access to, women. And even within the space of MSMEs, we have a lot of women actually going into micro, small, and medium enterprises doing businesses. But when it comes to access, it could be, is it the issue around financial muscles or collateral that they can be able to use or to tender to access financial service. So it's about a lot of initiatives going on to see how they can broker that gender imbalance that we have. So the central bank initiatives revolves around focusing and targeting on women, so that they can see what are the barriers and how can we now break that barriers? How can we also, support that initiative so that more women can also have access. So at the end of the day, we want to have that gender balance. In fact, in November, precisely on 8th of November, even in the presidency, we are hosting a gender inclusion event in partnership with United Nations Women. The whole aim is how can we now create some sort of incentives and some economic opportunities, of course, for Nigerian women, so that they can be able to thrive. As much as men also does have access, then women should also, they are all Nigerians within that age bracket, should also be entitled to that kind of opportunity and such economy. So if central bank, not only them, many other initiatives, institutions are going on, but for us at the presidency, I think is more of, coordination and again trying to engage all the stakeholders to make sure that enabling environment is provided for this kind of, access to happen for all Nigerians.
Okay, there's this, I understand that you've signed an accord during the insurance roundtable.
Yeah.
Is it also part of the initiative?
Well,
And what does it entail?
Well, yes. ASO Accord is the overall initiative, actually, which I told you, commitment. It was signed by, the Vice President, then the Minister of Finance, Central Bank Governor, National Security Advisor, Nigerian Governors representing, Chairman of Nigerian Governors Forum representing the entire 36 states, and then the private sector. That is ASO Accord, a symbolic commitment of this administration to economic and financial inclusion. While the insurance roundtable we did last week, which that in this national financial inclusion strategy that was issued in 2012, I told you, there was a target of achieving insurance of 40% insurance, right, by the year 2020. But if you also look at the developed countries in the world, you realize that insurance sector, they normally are very big, bigger than bigger than the banking sector, as it were. But in Nigeria, we're trying to bring, in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. As it is now, it's about 3.3% or thereabout. So the point of the aim of that insurance roundtable that we did last year, we did it in collaboration with NICOM, who is the regulator in the insurance sector. We now say, okay, let's bring all the experts in the insurance space. Let's discuss issue. How can we make this administration, to support the insurance sector so that it will create jobs and more economic opportunities also have to come in there. So that's basically the essence of that roundtable. So it's like what you call a one-on-one discussion. When we understand what exactly is the issue, then what are the policy requirements, what are the bottlenecks, then what are the challenges, then how can we, of course, as government now, come in and unlock those doors so that Nigerian insurance sector can also thrive. So basically, that's the essence of that insurance roundtable that we did last week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nuruddin Jaro. I'm afraid we're out of time, but